Hey guys, this is Walking the Fine Line here, and I just wanted to make a pretty quick video about some tips and tricks that I have for NASCAR Heat 4, particularly the career mode. So, I've played this game quite a bit, and I'm not an expert or anything, but I found some settings that really work for me. I know a lot of people in the past have said that, the games are either too easy or too hard. So, I've kind of developed a system along with getting some advice from Reddit and whatnot, and I think it works very well. So we're going to go over 4 different sections here: gameplay, driving, which are both under the career mode settings, setup, and difficulty. So let's get into it. To begin with, if you want to start messing with setups, then I think you need to do either hard or expert. I just do expert, and then you can mess with it, but it'll be harder to control. For transmission, you could do manual or automatic. I prefer manual just because you get to determine when you shift, and it can help you especially on restarts or at the road courses. Brake smoothing. This is actually pretty important. This is basically, from my understanding, anti-lock brakes. And I have noticed that if you have this off, then when you hit the brakes at a track like Richmond, the car will want to do that classic NASCAR Heat action and jerk to the left like it's loose. But even if you adjust the brake bias, it won't really help. So putting this on low really helps me. You still have a little bit of it, but it's much better. You could always go high too, but low works well for me. Car identifiers, that's just personal preference. I like them off because then there are less distractions, but if you want them on, go for it. Alright, so difficulty we'll get to a little later, so let's just focus on this. I recommend full damage if you're if you want a more realistic approach. It's not as good as it should be, but it works. I use a 50% race length, and I'll explain why. So I like to have the AI pit at the end of the stages, because if they don't, then the strategy gets kind of wonky. So basically, the 50% race length ensures that I can mess with the tire wear and find a setting that ensures that they pit after stages 1 and 2. So in dirt, there's obviously no pitting, but I just like it at ×4. It doesn't really make a difference, but at like trucks in Daytona at 50%, you want ×3. Cup at Daytona, you want ×1, so on and so forth. So just a little piece of advice. Alright, for the tire wear rate, I've found that I like less wear and then more grip for the fall off. And the reason being is that while it is wonderful having tires get chewed up and having to really drive the car, it's not as balanced as it could be with the AI, but I found that less wear and more grip are generally pretty even with the AI setting tire wear effect at less. It's not perfect. There are a couple tracks here and there that's not quite right, but it's pretty good. So that's what I like to use. If you want more tire wear or more pit stops, you can mess with these, but these will ensure that you don't lose much speed in comparison to the long run with the AI. Flags, I always do relaxed. In dirt, it can be a little screwy sometimes, but if you do strict, then what I found is that if there's a spinner right in front of you, you can't avoid him or her because the AI takes over and you just slam into it. So I like relaxed yellows. Stages, obviously I like the stages because of the tire wear and whatnot. And then I do quick qualify. Now of course it's up to preference, but I do quick qualify because I spend a decent amount of time in practice and I don't want to run through. But if you want more accurate qualifying times, do session qualify, because quick qualify, I think they're about a quarter to half a second faster than they are actually in race trim. Alright, so driving. I keep all these off, but you can mess with them as much as you need. For the draft effect, now this is where it gets interesting. I run on the lowest settings for both, because I don't like how in every Heat game, including Dirt to Daytona, and maybe even before, you have more of an effect with the draft than the AI do. So it kind of gives, not kind of, it gives the player an unfair advantage. So with turning it down to the lowest, the advantage is minimal, if none. So it really evens it out. And also, if you want the pack to get spread out at Daytona and Talladega, they will with these settings. So it's pretty cool. But, you know, personal preference, I just like it because it's not all about drafting then. Alright, skill range for the AI. Gotta go with wide. Again, it's personal preference, as is most of the stuff, but I like how spread out the field gets. I'm not a fan of when it's really bunched up. Stability. For dirt, I strongly recommend more stability for the AI because they will spin if you sneeze on them. But when it comes to oval, or pavement racing I should say, I like less stable. However, in both disciplines, more skill. Starting spread, I like expanded because it gets the clumps of the field away right away. It gives you a little more room. Mechanical failures are actually randomized. I choose between 1, 2, and 3, and that way it kind of changes up the strategy. Makes it feel a little fresher. For AI, less effect. I already talked about that. Fuel consumption, for the most part, you want to keep this at normal, but there are certain tracks and series that you might need to adjust it. For example, Atlanta, if you want the AI to have a more even fuel consumption, you got to go slower. Otherwise, you're going to pit way earlier. Same thing at Martinsville in the trucks. But generally speaking, you want to keep it on normal. Impact forces. So this is how much your car goes crazy if you hit someone or the wall or whatever. I think it's actually, yeah, it says that with the AI. Excuse me. I do low when it comes to dirt because I have this on more stable, but when I go to less stable, I put it on high. So, you know, those work together in my settings. Alright, and then draft partners, I only use them at Daytona and Talladega. Otherwise, Alright, so there you go with the gameplay and driving. Now we're going to get into the setup and the difficulty. And this is where it gets a little more complicated. I'll just load in. So pretty much these games, and I'm not just talking about this game or the last several, but pretty much every NASCAR game that I played, I've dabbled with setups in one shape or form. But what I found is that there's like a certain range where if you do too much with the setup, then you're going to dominate the AI, but if you don't do anything with it, you're going to be slow. So I think I found, at least for myself, a pretty good medium that I'm going to explain here. And these are basically like modified preset setups, but for me they work pretty well. Now, disclaimer, they're not for online league racing. You could probably use this as a way to practice a preset for a preset league, but if you're doing a custom career race, or sorry, custom setup race, do not use these. Look online, because you will be anywhere from half a second to a second slower lap. So anyway, alright, so let's look at the setup. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is hit square, so recommend setups, and you see where it says tight? You want the little icon to be on tight. Alright, so then you take everything that you see here and you write it down, pen or pencil, whatever. You could even take a picture too, but pretty much I'll just show an example. I see that the shocks are 5, 5, 12, and 5, and then it's 5, 12, 8, and 5. Alright, so what you do now, and you do this with each section, press square, and then go all the way to loose, and then you see how the shocks compare. So actually, and you'll find this a lot with a lot of the setups, the shocks are the exact same. So pretty much what that means, this is kind of like a, oh, what's it called? It's like spec setups. You have certain things you can adjust, but there's like a baseline. So with the shocks, since there are no differences between tight and loose, these are what I run. I run these, you just stick with them. You don't touch them. Now, with the weight, you'll always want this at 54.2. 50 is for road courses, but at ovals, always 54.2. They have it correct for the other 3 series. I don't know why they didn't do it with dirt, but you want it at 54.2. That'll help turn the car. For the front weight, this is one of those things where it's determined by the setup guide, so tight. Okay, so it is 50.0 for the front weight, so that's the highest you can go. And then if we go to loose, 49. Alright, so you can go anywhere from 49.0 to 50.0. Not higher or lower. Now with the wedge is one of those things where it's going to be 45 to 55 because you can change it during the race. So anywhere from 45 to 55 is good. Ride height. Alright, let's see. Tight, 5.5 for the front. Back, 5.5. Let's check the rear. Alright, 7.5. And then go to loose, 10. And so that means that you can go anywhere from 7.5 to 10 inches on the rear ride height. Now, you might be thinking, John, this is cool and all, or this is really stupid. Either way is fine. But then you say, hey John. Oh no, I lost my train of thought. It'll come back. Anyway, alright, so spring settings. I can't believe I totally forgot what I was gonna say. Sorry about that. Alright, so springs. Let's take a look. You can do these by grouping. Sometimes I get impatient and I do 2 at a time. So let's just do it that way. 230 and 220 on tight. The same on loose. Rear, 156, 180. 156, 180. Alright, so then tire pressures. They can go actually from 8 to 25 only in dirt. But when you pit, they can do 10 to 60. So there's a little discrepancy there. I just say 10 to 60 on tires everywhere. For the miscellaneous settings, for dirt, I do 0.0 to 5.0 degrees for left camber, and then negative 5.0 to 0.0. This is important, especially in dirt, because it'll really help rotate the car in the turn. Tire wear isn't a factor in dirt, so you could just crank these babies up, and 5 is the highest you can go. You always want this to be negative and this to be positive. On ovals, on road courses, you want them both to be negative, and then this would be negative 5 to 0 on that. So, yeah, you can mess with those. For pavement tracks, I keep it to 0.0 to 2.5 right here for the left, and negative 2.5 to 0.0. So, yeah. Alright, front sway bar. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I'll say it in a minute. Alright, so tight. The front sway bar is 1.5. Alright, so it's 1.065 to 1.5. And actually, this is the perfect time to say it. Alright, so a lot of people don't really know what this stuff does. And to be honest, I think they do a very poor job explaining it. There are games like Project Cars where they actually have a virtual crew chief that helps you. This game doesn't have any of that. And it also doesn't tell you, like, hey, if you raise the gears, or, sorry, if you raise the wedge, it makes your car tighter. You just have to kind of either know it or figure it out on your own or look it up. So, a good way to kind of figure out what each thing does, generally speaking, look at tight. Alright, so front sway bar, 1.5, right? Alright, if you go all the way loose, it's at 1.065. So that means that if you want the car to be tighter, you go up on the front sway bar. If you want it to be looser, you go down. Now, of course, this doesn't work with every single option because some of them, like the tires, they don't change. But you'll find that, like, at a few tracks, the shocks change, and particularly in Cup, the springs will change. And then you'll be like, okay, well, let's say that this is higher, so that's going to be looser. I don't actually remember off the top of my head what it does, but you get the point. So then, anyway, next, tight, none for sway bar, or rear sway bar. Alright, for tight, it's 8 at 9.75, then loose, 10 and 11.75. Brake bias, 45. Grill tape, 0. Oh. This is one, the grill tape you can mess with as much as you want with my settings. In dirt, you want it at 0 because there's no reason to have it any higher. Dirt cars get dirt. I know it's not realistic in this game because they don't pick it up, but just keep it at 0. Wheel lock 18 to 24, so if you raise the wheel lock, it makes your car turn more or get looser, if you want to think of it that way. And then steering offset, this one generally doesn't change. The gears, they only first and second gear matter, along with the rear end ratio. As you can see, 2-1 5.43 and then 2-1 5.43. You don't really see, I haven't really seen any gear changes. So anyway, here's an additional step. I sometimes like to randomize what preset I start with, just so that way I don't always just make the exact same setup. So I'm gonna ask Siri, hey Siri, pick a number between 1 and 9.
A random number between 1 and 9 is 1.
Okay, so I'm starting with a tight setup. So basically what that means is that I'm gonna get this all the way up to 54.2. I already know the shocks are all good, but you want to double check that. And then this is gonna be tight, so I think I'm going to want it a little looser. Definitely going to want this quite a bit looser. Alright, and then the key is don't make too drastic of changes. You know, besides getting them to like the correct parameters, you know, just subtle changes can make a big difference. Like do maybe 1 or 2 clicks to start off with. I've done a lot with this system, so I kind of know what to expect from my car. So anyway, now that covers the setup section. Next is the difficulty section. So as you can see, I have a 15.848. Alright, so I'm going to run approximately 5 laps here. Probably going to be more like 2 or 3. So pretty much what you want to do is you want to run anywhere from like 3 to 5 laps and see how close you are to the goal time. And this is very important if you want the right experience. Because unfortunately they don't have an auto function for difficulty in career. They have it for the other modes, but not this for some reason. Okay, so just for simplicity's sake, alright, so I ran a 15.848. I'm sorry, that's the goal time. I ran a 16.192. Alright, so let me back out. Normally I start on easy with this and go up, but this time I decided to start on legend. Alright, so you take the number that you ran. So I ran a 16.192, and then you subtract the goal time. So it was a 15.848. Alright, so I was plus 0.344 seconds off of the goal time. So, now what I'm going to do is lower the difficulty down to hard, because I don't think I'll need to go past that. So, I go to hard, and then it takes a little time. As you can tell, the main issue with my settings is that they take a decent amount of time. So, anyway, now we're going to see what type of lap time they want for the goal on hard. So on legend they wanted a 15.8. Let's see what they want on hard. I'm gonna guess it's around a 16.7 to 16.9. Usually there's like anywhere from like 7/10 to a second and a third difference between each level. So let's see. Okay, finally it loaded. Alright, so it's a 17.015. Alright, so now you do 16.192, which is the time I ran, and you subtract 17.015. Alright, so that means that I was approximately 8/10 faster with my setup on hard. On legend, it's plus 0.3 ... So what I do is that whenever I figure out these numbers, I go with the one that is the closest. So since I am the closest on legend, I'm only 3/10 off versus 8/10 faster on hard, I'm going to go with legend. Now, what that means is that it's going to be a little harder, but it should be more balanced. So it's like I'm supposed to finish 15th in the races due to my incentive contract. So that means that I should run anywhere from like 10th to 15th. If I put it on hard, I might win or get a top 5 or something. So it's up to you based on like how much of a challenge you want. I always go with the closest one, and if there's a tiebreaker, I go with the hardest option. So anyway, I hope that really helps you guys out there. This video actually turned out to be longer than I expected, but thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoy these settings. As always, you know, you can always just do your own thing, but I just wanted to help you guys out a little bit. Alright, this was Walking the Fine Line. Have a wonderful night. Take care.